Hello and welcome to What the Pho Travel Podcast. This is Series 3, Episode 3, and this one is all about South Africa.
Hello guys, welcome along to another episode of What the Pho Travel Podcast. We're going to be taking a little break from our Latin America trip. Last episodes we spoke about Cuba and Brazil. We're now going to head over to Africa, and in particular South Africa, like Amy said, and we're joined in the studio by Jodie and Jez. Hello.
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 Love the alliteration of your names, by the way.
Thank you. We have another couple of friends who are called Julia and Joe, and when we all get together,
we have a right old time, don't we?
Love it. Okay, so we know you because Jodie and we work together, don't we, at the BBC. What do you do, Jez?
I work in software, so very little of software involves talking or doing things. It's a lot of typing, so very different.
Sound effects there, love it.
Very different to recording and broadcasting, so I'll do my best.
I think at this point you need to reveal your broadcasting history.
Yes.
Well, I did a small amount of student radio, but that was 10 more than 10 years.
More than 10 years ago.
You made me sad with how long ago that was.
Well, hopefully we can relive some of those moments today.
Well, this the equipment here is all very sophisticated and works, so that's quite unfamiliar in terms of what I was used to at university, where everything was always slightly falling down.
Cool. Today's episode, we're talking about South Africa, as we said, and what's coming up on the show today. We're doing the Capitals game. We are playing game show facts as normal. We'll be talking about Johannesburg, Cape Town, Table Mountain, all those sorts of things. We're going to be playing a game called Scattergories, which will be based on South Africa, because in the office sometimes we play a game, don't we, Jodie? When you walk past us, we tell you an artist and you have to give us 3 songs. Like now, Shakira, go.
Wherever, whenever. I was going to say Laundry, but that was the name of an album, was it? Something to do with laundry. She-Wolf and
Nice.
Hips Don't Lie.
There we go.
Very good.
Jodie's very good at this.
Laundry Day or something?
I don't actually have a very good knowledge of Shakira albums.
Oh,
It's one of my gaps, I'm afraid.
No, I don't know. But yeah, so we play that game, so I thought we'll do a similar sort of game for our game today. We're also going to be talking about Nelson Mandela and the Apartheid too, because we need to add some history in as well. Because you went to the Apartheid Museum, didn't you?
We did. We can tell you more about that.
Yes, we will talk about that later. But Nick, should we start off with some shout-outs?
Let's do it. Shout-outs, here we go. First of all, a special shout-out to Kate and Lisa from the Wanderlust Chronicles blog. They've mentioned us in their top travel podcast of 2018.
Yes.
That's pretty cool. And they also wrote, because they wrote a little synopsis about each podcast, and they actually said the words, What the Pho Travel Podcast, one of our personal faves.
Love it.
So thank you very much to those guys. So yeah, they're from Wanderlust Chronicles blog. Moving on, we heard from Dinny on Instagram. She said, so stoked I found you guys. Your podcast is my new favourite. I'm from Indonesia, but living in Queenstown, New Zealand. Thanks for saying nice things about both places. I'm glad we did. I don't remember actually saying nice things.
Don't listen to the Cuba episode.
Yeah,
if you've got any connection to Cuba.
They're not from Cuba, so that's fine. Molly Dunn also got in touch on Instagram. She said, I've started listening to your podcast and love it. Have you done an episode about Canada yet? So I guess that's where she's from. We haven't. There's no plans soon, but I've been to Canada twice. I really love it, and I'm sure one day we will. There's lots of good things to say about Canada.
Yeah, we're aiming to hit every country, really. So.
Well, that's it, yeah. Josh on Twitter, he said he listened to our Iceland episode and found it amusing, which is great, thank you.
Good.
And when he went to Iceland, he loved it. Now, that's normal. We're in the minority. We didn't like Iceland, but everyone else seems to love it.
Have you guys been to Iceland?
We haven't. It's on our list of places we want to go, but then I spoke to you about it and it put me off a bit.
Sorry. And the legend that is Anthony Murray, do you remember we met him at our faux party? I think the second party in London. On Instagram, he sent us a picture of what looks like a menu or an advert in a newspaper, and it had the definition of pho or pho. Vietnamese soup, and he handwrit on it. He also gave another definition. He said, an excellent podcast, give it a listen.
Such a cool picture.
What a guy.
It was really funny.
That is it for this month's shout outs. Thank you very much everyone for getting in touch. Keep it coming, you know that we love it.
Right, we are going to play the capitals game. I'm not sure I've prepped you for this, but you don't need no prep.
It's all right. We're going to be straight in there.
Let's start. Who wants to go first?
Why don't you go first, Jodie? You seem very confident.
Okay, I'm keen.
Okay, so the capitals game. I'm going to give you a country, and you have to give me the capital city of that country. You have 30 seconds. Let's go. Netherlands.
Amsterdam? No, I don't think it is Amsterdam. Is it The Hague? Rotterdam? Is it Amsterdam?
Is that your answer? Slovakia. I'm not going to give you the answers until the end. Slovakia.
Am I allowed to pass?
Yes. China.
Beijing.
South Korea.
Seoul.
Finland.
Helsinki.
Somalia.
Dar es Salaam?
Mexico.
Mexico City.
Chile. Ooh, time is up. Okay. Right, Nick, do you want to go through the answers quickly?
I feel like I failed quite badly on some of
It
those.
seemed very hard, didn't it?
Yeah, good luck for you.
I'm very nervous now.
It was a shaky start, really, wasn't it? Then you were always playing catch-up from that moment. You got it right. Amsterdam is the capital of the Netherlands.
Oh, I just doubted myself. I should have known.
And then Slovakia, you got that wrong, or you didn't know it, but that's Bratislava.
I wanted to say... No, I'm not going to say what I wanted to say because it's clearly wrong. Moot point.
China, you got that correct. Beijing. South Korea, you got that correct. Seoul, you're on a little bit of a roll now. Finland, Helsinki, you got that correct. And then Somalia, you got that wrong. The answer is Mogadishu.
Oh.
And Mexico, you got that correct, Mexico City. And you were just in time.
Yes.
So that means you got 5, which is a pretty average.
That's a half-decent score. Okay, so the lowest score we've got is 1. So, Jez, that's all you've got to beat.
Okay, great.
1. And
I'm going to aim to beat Jodie, though, obviously.
of course.
Of course.
Yeah, got to have some marriage rivalry going on here.
Yeah.
But our highest score is actually 13.
Oh.
That was Richard.
He was
from
very good.
The RJK podcast. He smashed it. He was really good.
So none of your questions are the same as Jodie's. So
That's a shame.
Yeah, we
That would have
can't
been
cheat
helpful.
in that way. No. Right. So Jez, same rules apply. 30 seconds and go. Belgium.
Brussels.
Poland.
It's the capital of Poland. It's not Krakow, is it? I'll say Krakow.
Thailand.
Bangkok.
Mongolia.
Ulaanbaatar.
Russia.
Moscow.
Ethiopia.
Pass.
Peru.
Lima.
Panama.
Pass.
Portugal.
Lisbon.
Hungary.
I'm going to pass that as well.
Ooh, and time is off. So you got through more than Jodie did.
I'd like to say I could have done so much better on that round.
Well,
Everyone
I could have done better
always
on your
says that.
round.
Everybody says that, Jodie.
I knew Mogadishu.
Okay, let's go through it. So Belgium, Brussels, you got that right.
Yes.
Poland, you got that wrong. That's Warsaw.
Ah.
Yeah, not Krakow or Krakow, however it's said.
I would have said that. I always go to Krakow, I think. I always say that.
Thailand is Bangkok, you got that right. Mongolia, well done. Ulaanbaatar, very impressed with that. Russia, Moscow, you got that correct. Ethiopia is Addis Ababa.
Of course it is.
You got that wrong. Peru, Lima, you got that correct. Panama is Panama City, you got that wrong.
That would have been worth a guess, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, the rule really is, if in doubt, just say the country and then say city.
That's a good rule.
Then we've got Portugal, Lisbon, you got that correct. And Hungary, you got that wrong, that's Budapest, and then it was time up.
Of course it's Budapest.
So you got 6.
So you beat by 1 point.
I'm so sad about this.
But that was a good performance by both of you guys.
Yeah.
We could combine our score to 11 and then feel happy with
We
each
still
other.
wouldn't beat that man who got 13.
Don't think he must have had all countries with really short names
Well,
to fit it in the time.
the way that he did it was he listened back to a YouTube video that constantly plays it when you sleep.
Wow.
Dedication.
I mean, I don't feel so bad now. I'm not ever going to take it that seriously. So that's fine.
Basically, Richard, get a life.
Yeah,
Pretty much.
that's not what I'm saying, but yeah.
Right, we're going to move on to game show facts. So, guys, this is where Nick is going to run through a load of facts about South Africa and educate us.
Play that music. The Republic of South Africa is, unsurprisingly, located in the most southern point of the continent of Africa. The country has one of the continent's biggest and most developed economies. There are 11 major languages, including English, Afrikaans, and Zulu. In the early 1900s, most of southern Africa was British, German and Portuguese controlled. Up until 1994, South Africa was ruled by a white minority government, which enforced a policy called Apartheid. In Afrikaans, it means apartness. This was a policy that governed relations between white minority and non-white majority. It sanctioned racial segregation and political and economic discrimination against non-whites. Nelson Mandela was an anti-apartheid revolutionary and political leader who was jailed for 27 years for trying to overthrow the pro-apartheid government. Growing domestic and international pressure, combined with fears of a racial civil war, meant that President F.W. de Klerk released him in 1990. Nelson Mandela then went on to be president in 1994 and worked towards a better future for all people in South Africa, white and black. South Africa is the only country in the world to have hosted the soccer, cricket and rugby World Cup. South Africa supplies up to 50% of China's beer, making local brewer S.A.B. Miller the largest brewing company in the world. South Africa is home to the highest bridge bungee jump in the world at 710 feet. And South Africa has 3 capital cities, Pretoria, Cape Town and Bloemfontein.
Very nice, Nick. Now, guys, were you surprised by lots of those facts?
I would like to know what happens if South Africa comes up in the capital cities game.
It has before,
yes.
And that was very controversial.
I should imagine.
I think we'd just take any of the 3 answers, really.
Yeah.
That seems fair.
I think there's like an administrative capital and then a local authority capital, and they all have slightly... Our friends in South Africa did tell us this.
Yeah.
But I don't know what the correct answer is.
Guys, can you explain your South Africa trip? So what places did you go to, just briefly? What route did you take?
Well, we flew to Johannesburg. This was in November last year, so just coming into springtime for them, really, spring into summer. We went because our very good friend and our former colleague, Amy, who works here at the BBC, Gavin Fisher, he emigrated there a couple of years ago for love, because sometimes people, when we say this, say, why on earth would you do that? But he met a lady and moved over there to be with her. So we went to see them. A couple of days in Johannesburg.
Yep. And then an internal flight down to Cape Town. I had a lovely few days in Cape Town. And then we went back to Johannesburg, and from there by car to the what were the mountains called?
Drakensberg.
Drakensberg
so
Mountains.
It's spelled like Drakensberg, but in South Africa, all A's are sort of pronounced like R. So anything where you see an A, you definitely have to say R.
Drakensberg.
Exactly.
That was pretty good.
Yeah, which is on the border with Lesotho. So it's about 4 or 5 hours from Johannesburg?
Yeah, about that.
And Drakensberg means dragon mountains because they're proper really big peaks. They're the highest peaks in South Africa, not obviously the highest peaks on the continent because that's probably Kilimanjaro. And it was beautiful. We spent a few days in the mountains, didn't we? And then we came back from there, back to Johannesburg, a few more days in Johannesburg doing interesting things, and then we came home.
Very nice. Now, I think I'm the only person here that hasn't been to South Africa because, Nick, you have, but you actually went to different places to Jodie and Jez, right?
Yeah, I did, which I guess is good for the show, really. I don't feel like I saw much of the country, and this was quite a long time ago. I wasn't really into travelling as I'm into now. Basically, a friend of mine, his dad moved to South Africa. He lived in Port Elizabeth, PE, as the locals say. So I stayed with him for a bit. I admit we were living a bit of a sheltered life, to be honest, in like a gated community. Like, I'm being honest, that's what it was. We did also visit a place not too far away called Plettenberg Bay. Have you heard of that?
Have not, no.
It's very beautiful, very nice place. And on the way to Plettenberg Bay, you go over a very big bridge, and that's where the world's biggest bridge bungee is in the world. And I did it, and I fucking hated it, to be honest. But I'm glad to say I did it, but it was the most scariest thing I've ever done in my life. And then I remember we did a lot of driving, but I don't remember it was this much because we looked on a map the other day. We also went to Kruger National Park, which is like the other side of the country, about a 14-hour drive. But I remember we did a lot of driving and we were away for a few days, and we did that, and that was amazing. So I did have a really good experience in South Africa, but haven't seen Johannesburg and I haven't seen Cape Town, which I really regret, but I'm sure one day we will.
We will be going there because I haven't been and I really want to go. But guys, so you said you started in Joburg.
Yeah, so what do you think of the place? Do you recommend tourists go there?
I would say that between Cape Town and Johannesburg, they're two very different cities with different feelings. And Gavin's theory actually is that Johannesburg is better if you're younger because it's much more vibrant, it's much more down to earth, there's loads going on. It's not very glossy, shall we say. Cape Town is really well-to-do and loads of gated communities, as you mentioned, Nick, and it just feels a bit more like you could be in Europe. Whereas when you're in Johannesburg, you know you are not in a European city because it doesn't have the same feel, does it?
What can you see in Johannesburg?
It's kind of still a world city, so you can get any kind of food that you want, and there's lots of either really posh shopping malls or interesting places to visit. So one of the best things we did actually was we went to a township called Alexandra, which is one of the biggest townships. They were basically, if you don't know the backstory, they were built when apartheid was being introduced in the 1950s. They were seen as sort of areas on the outskirts of cities where you could put all the people who weren't white, and they were, I think at the time, black and coloured, because they say coloured people in South Africa. It's this phrase that gets used.
That's what we now call mixed race.
Yes, exactly. Even though here we would never say that. But they weren't allowed to own land or property, possibly. So they were kind of pushed to the outskirts. And the one we visited, I think it's home to sort of 1.5 million people or something.
Yeah, it's enormous. And it's kind of fascinating as a place because the only sort of preconceived idea I had was I did an A-level in geography. And during my A-level in geography, we learned about shanty towns and favelas and things like that. And you get this all over the world. You get them in Brazil, famously. And
yeah, we've just been to one in Brazil.
Oh, really? So that was kind of, obviously that was some years ago now. And you see kind of photos of fairly low quality buildings made of sort of corrugated iron and things like that, and real poverty and a lot of crime. And there is poverty and there is crime, but it's so much more of a community and so much more of a place where you think of it as your expectation is that it's a desperate place, but there's so much hope and so much community and so much life being lived that actually it was quite a nice experience to see. And there's problems. There's clearly deprivation and there's clearly crime and all of that stuff. But we went to a school, which was a huge school there. We went to South Africans. Yeah, South Africans have a really a bizarre obsession with shoes.
Oh right, okay.
So the guy who was taking us around, he lives. There was a few guys taking us around who live in Alex. And he had really shiny shoes, and he was like, "Oh yeah, we love our shoes." And there's this shop in the middle of this township with racks and racks of shoes, and he said, "What do you think this place is?" And we guessed it's a shoe shop because they look like new shoes, but they're not. It's just a guy who cleans shoes professionally, and he's world renowned. I think was there a basketball player or something. I guess he must have had his success in the States where most of basketball happens, but he was South African, I think, and that's where he gets his shoes cleaned because it's the best guy for miles around at cleaning shoes. And it was just this incredible kind of, I can't begin to comprehend how you would take a pair of shoes that were covered in mud and make them look like new shoes, but that's basically what they did there. And just little stories like that that are filled with kind of pockets of fascinating lives being lived and kind of hope and stuff happening.
Yeah, it sounds very similar to the experience we had in a favela in Brazil. We had these ideas and preconceptions, which it turns out a lot of them were wrong, and we met some amazing people in the community. So that's really good you got to do that. Was that with an organised tour? How can people visit these townships?
Well, our friend Gavin has been on this tour, I think 5 times. For the 5th time he did it with us, because his aim is to sort of show people how South Africans really live rather than, as I say, the glossy gated community aspect that you do get as a tourist. Particularly if you go there on honeymoon and stuff, you kind of end up doing safaris and going along the garden route, I think it's called, and you don't maybe see what we got to see. So there is a company, the man who runs it is called Jeff. I've forgotten exactly what his company is called, which I feel bad about, but if you were to look for, say, Jeff Alex Tours, you would be able to find it. But we even got taken to their office, like the company who operates the tour, and Gavin said it has been completely different every time he's ever been on the tour. Sometimes it lasts an hour, sometimes it lasts 3.5 hours.
Oh, wow.
And on our tour, we met him, had a terrifying time, frankly, because there was us three, me and Jez and Gavin, this French man called Nicolas, and Jeff, the guide, and Jeff used to have a tour bus, but he's lost it because he couldn't keep up the repayments. So we went in an Uber, and the Uber driver was billed as the biggest weed smoker in all of Alex and was literally having a joint while we were waiting to get in the taxi.
And is it legal to smoke weed?
No.
No, it's not. Okay.
At this point, the only thing we knew was that we were going into Alexandra and the Foreign Office advised that you don't do that. So this was a brilliant start. You know, we were thinking, when I explain this to the ambassador, he's going to be pretty unimpressed.
Yes.
But there were no seatbelts in the car.
When we need...
Right.
And we pulled up and got out, and Jeff bought us some, what were they called? Those
Oh yeah, like a pancake, but quite small, biscuity pancake that's deep fried, that they were handing out. And this was this was the first time that Gavin had those, despite being on the tour 5 times before. He said there's not normally food, so we were very lucky. I can't remember what they were called, but they were sort of delicious.
Vetkoeken, that's it. They're more. You said biscuity. They're more like a deep fried Yorkshire pudding, which sounds really weird, but
kind of halfway between a Yorkshire pudding and a donut. Vetkoeken,
but
yeah,
sweet.
which is fat cake.
I think they sort of were kind of. They could have been either. If you'd had them with a sweet thing, they would have been sweet. But if you'd had them with some meat in, they would have been fine. But yes, this is all just to illustrate that it's kind of random, the experience that you have, but random in a very good way, in that they're not ever sticking to it and just wandering around the same bits and saying the same old spiel. I think every tour is sort of slightly different and seeing a different bit of the community and having a slightly different experience. So can't recommend it enough. It was probably one of the best things we did while we were there.
Would you say that if someone didn't want to go on the tour, do you reckon it's safe enough for somebody to walk into a township by themselves?
I probably wouldn't, because I did feel better that we had Jeff and there was a guy called Emmanuel, the one with the shiny shoes, and there was always at least 2 people with us, and not at any point did I feel threatened. But we went into a nursery, didn't we, where all these kids, and they were all jumping up and down, screaming out Malungu, Malungu, and that's the Zulu word for white person, because they never, ever, ever see white people where they live. So if you were to go without a Jeff, for example, you might encounter, I don't know, people really questioning, well, hang on, why are you here? And I don't think they'd be hostile, but...
No, mostly we were greeted with sort of amazement. But there was an area of the township that was a lot more run down than some of the other areas, wasn't it? It was quite... The housing was a lot more dense, and it was kind of... most of it's got electrical hookups and things, but I think this was kind of still getting to that place. And... you could kind of tell the atmosphere was sort of different. And actually there was the guys who were with us, we kind of noticed were a bit closer to us during that time. And it was quite... there wasn't... You wouldn't say you felt threatened, but it was kind of... You became aware that maybe it was different there. But we got to see it, and it was really nice, and nothing untoward happened at all, and we had a lovely time. But yeah, I think, apart from anything else, it's so sprawling and crazy and difficult to find your way around. I think you get a lot more out of it with a tour guide.
Yeah, absolutely, because they can tell you things that you're not going to necessarily see, or explain why things are a certain way. I would always recommend going with a tour on something like that. We did when we were in the favelas in Brazil, and we ended, and how you're saying how the trip kind of adapts every time. We got talking to this guy, and he invited us into his house and took us up to the balcony to show us the view, and things like that happen. And so I would recommend going with a tour. Yeah,
and I'd also say with a tour, it's good because you never know. In other cultures, you don't want to offend people, but you never know. You might do something which in our country is not offensive at all, but you might do something to upset someone, and you don't mean to do it. So having a tour guide, I think, is best. So that's really interesting, guys. Yeah, it's good to hear about that. Should we move on to Cape Town?
Yes, I did want to just quickly run through. I was going to do this later, but since it's come up about the apartheid, I wanted to give kind of like an overview for anyone that doesn't know what it actually is. So it all started because the white people who arrived in South Africa thought it was their God-given right to the land of South Africa from the natives. So this started in 1948 and finished in 1991, which was when I was born. So that's just crazy that it was still happening at that point. There was 4 categories of people, as we were saying earlier, what you referenced to. So you had white, you had black people, coloured, which we now call mixed race, and Indian people. 148 apartheid laws were brought into place, which included things like black people always had to carry their ID with them. They had to obey strict curfews. Public facilities like banks were always separated, so you had separate banks for black people, to white people, to Indian people. Interracial marriages were banned as well. native black South Africans were divided into 10 different locations called homelands, which is like the townships that you're explaining. And they were forced to do low-paid work as migrant labourers, like working in gold mines and things like that. Striking was illegal, so they always had to go to work. And non-whites were not technically citizens, so they weren't even, they had no rights, so they weren't even allowed to vote. Schools were divided by race too, and black education had a fraction of the money that white schools received, and black people left school at 13.
And yeah, so because what was happening, because black people were leaving school at 13, it wasn't a very good school in the first place. They didn't really have any choice but to do like the work you were saying, like in the gold mines, and that's what the white government needed. They needed cheap workers to keep their economy going. But looking back on it, I mean, we knew about this before doing this episode, but doing research, the more you research into it, you realise how awful it was. And like, this is a country in Africa where Europeans had just turned up and thought, this belongs to us, and introduced, these awful, awful rules. And I remember doing some research, we saw a picture just in a park bench. And this, I don't know why this particularly got to me, but this picture on the bench, it just said Europeans only. And I just thought, how rude, how out of order is that in Africa? A bench says Europeans only. So it's awful, really. So, yeah, what do you guys think? Did you experience, much of the aftermath of apartheid? Or did you speak to any people about this?
Yeah, you mentioned actually the education segregation. The effects of that are still being felt because obviously it only finished in 1991. The guys who ran our tour company, were a product of that school system. But we went into one of the guy's houses and he had a shelf full of books. And he said he's kind of studying business and he's learning, various different things. And he said he bought a book on marketing, but then he had to buy a dictionary because the book on marketing was full of words that he didn't understand. And it's just, the determination is incredible. But the fact that happened so recently means that there's a whole generation who are behind, and there are not still black doctors and black lawyers and even teachers, to the same extent that there are white, because the education wasn't there. You couldn't go to university and learn to be a lawyer or a doctor or whatever. So, yeah, it's still a huge problem.
And there might be those people, doctors and lawyers and solicitors, in a few years' time once it kind of gets further along the line. But that's not the position that the country's in at the moment. But the ANC is the current ruling party, and I know Jacob Zuma's in the news a lot at the moment, but it has a really, really robust democracy, even though it's quite a new democracy. People have their say and they have their votes, and the legal system is also really, really robust because it's new and because everyone has this vested interest in making it work. So that is quite different, I think, to lots of other countries or lots of people's perceptions, perhaps, of countries in Africa. While we were in Johannesburg, went to a really interesting place called Lily's Leaf, which is... it's wrong to call it a museum because it was a sort of a site of interest. It was basically where, as you mentioned at the start of this segment of the show, Nelson Mandela was, of course, sentenced to life in prison in the 1960s. He had been with others at a raid that took place, and they'd basically been plotting a series of, I think they were plotting sort of violent acts because basically they'd been trying to protest and be very reasonable and not be violent at all and get their voices heard, and that was failing. So there was a particular part of the African National Congress party who thought, oh, hang on, we might have to resort to slightly more violent tactics along the lines of what the kind of thing that was being seen in Ireland, for example, using violence to get your voice heard more. So Nelson Mandela was at a meeting where people were discussing doing that sort of thing, and somehow they were at this secret location on the outskirts of Johannesburg, and the police found out and they raided the property that night, and they were all taken away. The staff who worked there, who were just farmhands, they weren't involved in this in any way, they were tortured and beaten in order to try to get confessions out of them. A trial then took place, which was called the Rivonia trial, which is a real sort of pivotal moment in the whole apartheid story, where Mandela and others were sentenced to life in prison. And part of the reason we went there, and we were very interested in kind of the backstory, but our friend Gavin, who we were visiting, his uncle was the defence barrister for this trial.
Great uncle.
great uncle. Yes, sorry, I should have said his great uncle.
Well, that's interesting.
That's amazing.
Yes, so he was a man called Bram Fisher, and he was Nelson Mandela's defence lawyer and a whole bunch of other people who were on trial at that time. And although they, were found guilty of plotting this violence, the success was that they weren't sentenced to death. And that was due to our friend's great uncle, which, when you think about it, is amazing. There was a whole section in the Lilies Leaf area about him, wasn't there? And having that connection was just amazing.
Wow, that is amazing. Yeah, like you said, he was able to live and get out of prison, Nelson Mandela, maybe because of your friend's great uncle. That's incredible. And we should say it's a bit like when we talk about Cuba. Che Guevara comes up, and to some people he's a hero, to some other people he's not. He's one of them controversial characters. I'd say Nelson Mandela is less controversial, but we probably should say some people are going to say kind of what you were saying. Yeah, technically he broke laws to try and get his voice heard, but the laws were ridiculous anyway, and what he was fighting for ultimately was a good cause, wasn't it? And then even once he was released from prison, like a quarter of his life was taken away from him. Once he was out and he was president, he wanted to forgive and forget, didn't he? And he wanted to move forward and make South Africa a better place. So, incredible guy.
Some people, well, you can technically call him a terrorist, can't you?
Yeah, and people did in the 60s, but you can see why they would start to resort to this, because if you're living in you're made to feel like less than a person when you are the overwhelming majority of people in that country. Still to this day, I can't remember the exact numbers, but maybe say the population of South Africa is, say, 55 million people. 5 million of those are white. Everyone else is non-white, and yet still lots and lots of things are geared towards the European population or run by them. And you find in restaurants and that sort of thing, quite a lot of the serving staff will be non-white, and there is still elements of that all over the place. But as we say, it sort of links back to the opportunities that you have at the start of your life going forward, and we all have to hope that in the next few decades that changes.
There is still incredible racism, actually, in certain areas of South Africa, to the extent that I think in Western Europe we would find quite shocking. And there are people, like we were staying with some of friends of Gavin who have stories about comparing non-white people to baboons and just like the kind of thing that happened here so many years ago now that, it's unbelievable to my ears, but it still kind of happens.
Yeah.
So it's a fascinating country, and I don't think it would ever go back simply because the democracy is as we said, so well established, and whites are the absolute minority. But yeah, there's clearly still a lot of work to do.
Yeah, well, yesterday we were watching a video on Trevor Noah. Do you know who that is? South African writer, producer and comedian, and he presents The Daily Show in America. I reckon you'd recognise him. But we were watching a video where he was telling a story because he's mixed race, and so his mother is black. And he remembers a time when he was really young, he was getting into a taxi with his mum, and the taxi driver said to them, "You're going to die today," because he was just so offended that she had a mixed race child. And so I'm not sure why, but they still got into the taxi, and he kept driving really fast and dangerously, wouldn't stop at traffic lights. So his mum said to him, "We're going to jump out of the car, and while it's moving, so I'm going to open the door and you need to jump out with me." And she had a baby with her as well, so she jumped out of the car, cocooned herself around the baby, and jumped out and sort of rolled out in a very Hollywood type manner, I imagine. You know how they jump out of cars. But yeah, he jumped out after her as well, and I just thought that was. But when he was younger, he didn't think that was anything different. That was kind of daily life for him.
He was talking about this book he's got out called. It sounds like we're advertising his book. We're not, but it's interesting. The title is very interesting because it's called Born a Crime. So it was illegal to be mixed race, which is mad, and that's what he was. He was growing up in South Africa when apartheid was still going on, and he himself was illegal. It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, and just before we finish this little segment, I just wanted to say, when we were talking about Nelson Mandela, I'm not sure if you know this, I really hope I can get the pronunciation right on this.
You've got no chance.
But his birth name is Nelson Rolihlahla.
Oh, is Mandela. Zulu you're trying to do? Because Zulu is a whole other, like they have all the noise, don't they?
Well, yeah, but this doesn't have the clicks or the, I don't know what you'd call them, but yeah, holiklachla, which means troublemaker. And I love that. I love that that's his name.
How about that?
Yeah, I think that's just quite apt for him.
Sometimes you have to be a troublemaker to, make the world a better place.
Yeah.
And break some rules along the way. So, should we play our game?
Yes, let's break up this chat with a little bit of game and then we'll come back to your trip and what you did after. So let's play Scattergories. Nick, do you want to explain what we're going to do?
Yeah, well, this is a game that we only played last week. I never even knew about it before. But the idea of the game is you roll a dice and the dice has lots of different letters on it. And you roll it and then say the letter J comes up. Then you have a minute or 30 seconds, I'm not sure, but to write down anything beginning with the word J to do with a particular topic that the game says. So the game might say things you dream about, and you got to write down as many things starting with J. So I don't know, quickly.
Jodie and Jez.
You dream.
It's good that you picked the letter J.
Yes.
Yeah, that was looked like I planned that, but I didn't.
I was going to say jelly.
There you go.
But
Dream
I
about
should have
jelly.
said Jodie.
Yeah, you should have said your wife. Yeah. So what we're going to do, we are going to pretty much play the same game, but we have to write down anything to do with South Africa for a full point. I will give half a point if we can write down something just travel related, okay? So we're going to roll the dice, we'll see what letter we get, and then we've each got a minute to write down as many South African or travel related things as possible, okay?
Okay, so I have my die here. Die, I never know how to say it.
Dice, I think.
I
Is
thought
it die when
was
it's
one.
plural?
Yeah.
I think it's the other way around.
Oh.
Dice is plural, right? Or is that what you... Okay.
Look it up afterwards and then edit it together.
No one cares.
Right, let's roll it. Okay, so anything to do with South Africa or travel related with the letter C. And go. Okay, time's up. Guys, how did you do?
Very poorly.
Pretty bad, yeah.
It's tough,
Pretty
isn't
bad.
it?
Now, one rule to mention, I'm not sure if you played this game before, but if somebody else has the same answer as you, neither one gets a point. Okay.
So it's a little
Yikes.
bit
you
like
think-
pointless, the game, where the more...
Obscure.
that's the word. The more obscure one, the better, because no one else is going to think of it.
I can think of one answer that surely all four of us will have written down.
You might be surprised.
Okay, well, Jodie, do you want to read out your answers?
Yes. So, Cape Town, which is surely the one that everyone's got.
Yeah, got that.
Yeah, got that.
See, now
didn't
my
put it.
brain, I was thinking there is a place called beginning with C, and my brain is not thinking
So
of
I
it.
don't get a point for Cape Town.
No.
Nobody gets a point.
I don't
cross it
know
off.
whether this is a bit niche because it's something you do while you're travelling or a way of travelling. Climbing. You're going to give me climbing?
I didn't have climbing, but I think you can
Yeah.
have that.
Yeah,
Have
thanks
that.
everyone.
There you go.
So
Thanks.
that's half a point.
Right, and I don't know your views on this. This is a hotel where we stayed when we were in Cape Town called Kelowna Castle.
Great.
Ooh, now that's a full point.
Double C.
And it's double C.
Double C, so you
So-
get 2 points.
Two.
Wow.
Thank you.
Very clever.
Again, bit niche here. The ship line, Cunard, who operate, cruise ships.
Great.
Travel
half a point.
company. Half a point.
Do they? What do
not
they
South-
run?
Oh, yeah.
Is it South African country company?
No.
Exactly.
Well, then
No,
half point.
just
yeah.
international. An area of Cape Town is called Camps Bay.
Great.
4 point.
Thank you.
Smashed
And
it.
another area of Cape Town is called Clifton.
Oh,
Another full
smashed
point.
it.
Thank you.
well, I'm embarrassed by my
So
answers
that's 1,
now.
2, 3, 4, 5.
Right,
Five.
there we go. Jez, do you have any answers that are different to those?
I do. I have Castle Beer. That was one of the
Great.
popular beers.
Full point.
Colonists. Bit of history.
Yes.
Great.
Okay. Yeah.
So would we say that's half or a full point?
Well,
It's
South Africa was
it's relevant,
a
yeah.
European colony.
I would say full point.
full point.
Yeah.
That's what I would say too. And then if you're going on holiday, you might go on a coach.
Yes.
There we
Oh,
go.
I was so excited then. My voice went. Very good, guys. I'm
Half
impressed.
point for that, I'd say. A coach.
Well,
Right.
they do have coaches in South Africa. So
I know.
I'm going to say it's a half a point.
Yeah, we're not
this is
having that.
very harsh. So
Okay.
2.5. What a
Oh, well done.
I think it's going to be more than me.
Okay, so let's go through mine. Is that right?
Yep.
So, couch surfing.
Ah, of course.
That's
half
a travel
point.
thing. Half a point. Canada is a country.
No doubt. No doubt about it.
I feel like that's a 0 point.
What do you guys think?
That's got nothing to do.
It's a majority vote.
It's got to be related to something you can do in South Africa.
No,
you
travel.
Can't just have Canada.
All travel.
Travel.
Canada is a bit random, to be fair.
I would say that's a
right.
no point.
Okay. So that's fucked up a lot of the rest of my answers. Just trying to think of countries. Right, okay. No. Well, yeah, I've got the word country. Like, that's travel, isn't it?
No, Nick. You can't
I think that
use
falls
it.
in the same bracket as Canada.
Weirdly, I think that's slightly more relevant, but
Okay,
I'm not
half
sure I
point
can
for-
explain why.
Half a point for
Come
country.
on. I won't have Canada, but I'll have country. Culture.
These are getting worse and worse.
Again,
Okay.
if you're having country, you should probably have
Yeah,
culture.
half a point. That's to do with
It's
travel.
a reason you go on holiday, isn't it?
Yeah, that's
Culture.
something to do with
Okay.
travel.
Yeah.
Cape Town, but of course we can't use it. And in South Africa, you will come across crocodiles.
I'd say
We did see a little crocodile.
We did see a crocodile. I can confirm there are crocodiles.
I would say there's a full point for that one then.
Great.
Wow.
Thanks. So that means I've got 1, 2.5.
Oh, same as me.
There you go. Same.
score.
Now I've got one that I'm shocked that no one said. Cats.
What about them?
Why would you say cats?
Cats.
Like
As
big
in
cats?
Yeah, game cat. Like
Oh.
cheetahs. Oh, another C. Cheetahs.
there you go.
Oh,
Good about that.
So I meant cats as in
Yeah, go on then for big cats.
safaris and stuff.
We did see some lions.
There you go. That's a cat.
You've put
Yeah,
half.
that's
You
what
can
I
give
mean.
yourself a full
Oh.
point for that because
Yeah,
it's
what we're
South
doing.
African.
Camping, which you would do in
Yeah.
South Africa.
No.
Away
That's
from the
Half
lions.
a point for
Half
that.
a point. Okay. Cargo.
Nice.
Half. Surely
Yeah.
half.
Yeah.
I think half's generous.
I think this is a weird one. Catamaran. Like the boat.
Travel, I guess.
You could do that in South Africa on the waters.
Half.
Bit of a controversial one. Colour.
You mean like...
That's a big part of South African culture, isn't it? Colour.
Like race.
Yeah.
Is that, yeah.
It's another word for race, isn't it?
Okay, so what, does that mean full point?
How many points have you got so far?
It depends.
Just because you don't want me to beat you. You're not going to like it, Jez. I've got 2.5.
Oh, well, I mean, all hope is lost. You might as well have another point.
Go on then.
Colour.
Yeah.
That's a big part of South African culture,
It's
isn't
very
it?
loose colour.
I mean,
South
you said
Africa.
country, so you can't talk.
Okay.
Okay, so Jodie won, right?
I'm the winner. I got 5 points.
5 points to
Good
my.
effort.
Wow.
Thank you.
Very good.
Yeah, I got 3.5. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well
I'm
done, guys.
shocked I came second, but there we go. That's our game. Scattergories.
It's good.
Tough game.
It's
There we
tough,
go.
yeah.
Right, let's get back to our chat. So, guys, tell us about Cape Town. What did you do? What did you see?
We decided to split our time in Cape Town because it's quite an interestingly shaped city because of Table Mountain. So there's a whole area that's sort of more the north of the city called City Bowl. That's sort of where the main brunt of the action is. And then south of Table Mountain, the city continues and you've got areas like Muizenberg and Kalk Bay and going down to Cape Point.
Kalk Bay. Kalk Bay would have begun with a C, wouldn't it?
No, it begins with a K.
Okay, never mind.
Ooh.
Well,
Yeah.
we could have convinced them that it began with a C.
We could have done.
I would have believed
We
you.
were feeling crafty.
So we split our time. We were there for nearly a week and we had 3 nights in a hotel in the City Bowl area. And that's where most of the real touristy stuff is, like Table Mountain. The advice we were given about Table Mountain is if there is clear conditions, go, go, go. Because if you've planned a day and then you get to the day and the weather's rubbish or something else happens or the wind's high, you ain't going. So we seized the moment,
We
didn't
did. As soon as we got to our hotel, which had a lovely view of Table Mountain, you had to kind of lean slightly awkwardly out the window, but it did have a view of Table Mountain. They weren't lying to us. And we could see the top, and we thought, let's go for it. So up the cable car. The cable car span around as it went up.
Slowly.
Slowly,
Ooh.
which was, but weirdly, like the floor revolved, but the walls didn't.
It confused the hell out of people.
Mostly involved people trying to hold onto the rail on the wall and sort of falling over and crushing us.
Did you get
So that was very odd.
travel sickness with that?
No, it was okay, but I did get crushed by quite a lot of elderly Dutch people who were hanging on for dear life and then just rotating round, and I was like, just stand.
Just stand.
Don't hold on, just
It
stand.
was very strange, but it afforded a good view.
Speaking of the view, what do you think's best with Table Mountain? Being in the city looking up at it or being at the top looking down on the city?
I think the top looking down on the city, only because there were really fun creatures there that we enjoyed called dassies.
Yes.
Their technical name is a rock hyrax. They look like little rodents, but they're not rodents. They're actually related to elephants, believe it or not.
Really
They
cute.
share a lot of their genetic code with elephants, but they're very small, probably like a big rabbit size.
Yeah, guinea piggish.
Yeah, and they're sort of brown and fun, and they hang out on rocks.
We
so
saw
there's a load of them.
the first one we saw. It was sort of like really timid and not timid, docile, and it was kind of standing up and looking cute. So we spent ages taking pictures of it because it was amazing. We were like, "Oh, look at this thing!" And then it's that situation where you turn around and there's thousands of them all just looking at you, and it turns out they're not that unusual at all. They're just everywhere. The novelty wears off, but they are very cute.
Have you got pictures?
We have,
Yes.
of course.
If you send them to us, we'll put them on our Instagram.
Lovely.
Excellent. I've
We
got a
will.
good picture of a dassie. And the beautiful thing about Table Mountain is that you can see the City Bowl side, you can see the Cape Point side, you can look out across the Atlantic. It was stunning up there, wasn't it?
It was.
But we saw people doing dodgy things on the rocks, like getting really close to the side for selfies, because obviously there's no safety barriers or anything, and you've got a lot of idiots, frankly, who are like, "Oh, go over there," and I think, no.
You've
don't.
got a great picture, haven't you, of sort of set back from the edge slightly. You can look across, and there's all just loads and loads of people just posing weirdly, and it's like a collection of statues or something.
It is.
It's just a load of people just going.
Oh, wow. We will put that on our
Grinning and
Instagram if
looking-
that's
looking
okay.
down.
Send you all of these.
Great.
Well documented.
Is it expensive to go up to Table Mountain?
Well, we actually got a sort of city pass card type thing. I think it was called a Go card, where you could choose the number of attractions that you wanted, and then you got certain other discounts in places. So one of our attractions that we chose was Table Mountain, just the cable car up and down and all that kind of stuff. And I think the whole card was maybe like £100 each, or maybe it was £50
I
each,
think it was
maybe it was
£50.
£100 altogether.
You can walk up, which
You
I
can.
think is probably free,
Oh, right, okay.
but it does come at the expense of making you very tired.
The other stuff you can do while you're in Cape Town is head down to the coast more to an area called Muizenberg. So we did that in the second half of our time in Cape Town, stayed in a hotel, which I used in my Scattergories competition,
Yes.
Kelowna Castle. We got upgraded to a suite
Yes.
when we walked there.
That's great.
Different bits and pieces to do in that part of Cape Town, including a penguin colony that
Yes.
lives at an area called Boulders Beach. They are a particular kind of South African penguin that you don't find anywhere else, and they were very sweet.
They were excellent. They're about 9 inches tall, maybe 12, the big ones.
Yeah.
And they just kind of hop around on the rocks. And
Yeah, I was going to ask what
sometimes-
sort of conditions are they living in? Because obviously when you think of penguins, you think of snow and all of that, which what isn't going to be there.
It's just like a rocky beach.
They live on a
And
rocky
they
beach,
kind
okay.
of leap about.
and they waddle down to the sea.
Yeah, do their thing.
It smelled quite bad,
Yeah.
not going to lie. Penguins
Yeah.
do have a particular
You're,
smell.
You're up on a sort of boardwalk that goes around the beach, so you can't get close to them. And in fact, there is a fine if you
Oh, really?
if you handle the penguins. There's a
But the fine was
like a
ridiculously
small fine. Yeah,
The fine was, I think, 200 rand, which is
about
like fiver.
Are those penguins there? Do you know? Are they there because the only land south is the South Pole, Antarctica?
Well, the amount of times I said that, Nick, Jez laughed at me in the end, because everywhere we went on the Cape, I'd be looking and saying, "There's nothing here until Antarctica." But it's true. I think that's just where they hang out and they live a happy life.
they
don't
seem delighted. Yeah,
And
Very cute.
also, when you sort of going down that bit of coast, you eventually get to Cape Point, which is the most. It's not the most southerly point.
most southwesterly
point on the continent.
of Africa, and there is a lighthouse there, which is there was a lighthouse. They built a lighthouse, and then I think they had to build another lighthouse because the first lighthouse they built was too high up because the cliffs are very high. So whenever there's low cloud, the ships couldn't see the lighthouse. So it was a complete disaster of a lighthouse. But you can go and see it, which is very nice.
Okay.
Nice.
I just want to ask a bit about Cape Town itself. So, did you think it was a nice city, like good bars and restaurants? What do you think?
Yeah, we went out to the food market, which was one of our favourite places,
Yes.
wasn't it? It's quite cosmopolitan. A really great thing, actually, is how cheap Uber is. Just, it costs no money. It's like 20p or something
Yeah, it's
for a
incredible.
taxi ride, which is very, very different to London or other European cities where we've been.
And also, sort of surprisingly, when you think about maybe the reputation that parts of South Africa have, it's considered really safe. You know, Uber has a bit of a dodgy reputation in a lot of parts of the world, but actually that's kind of how most people seem to get around, and it's considered safe, and it's basically free.
So it is quite easy to get out and about places, isn't it? And we went to, there was that particular road, wasn't there, in the City Bowl area that was sort of lined with restaurants. We went to an amazing fish restaurant really near our hotel, because obviously being so near the coast, they've got a lot of access to really fresh fish, and they had like 6 or 7 different really kinds that you would never get in this country, that they would just cook for you in a beautiful way. And yeah, I think it's, as I said before, Johannesburg is probably more of a party city, and Cape Town is more of a well-to-do city. We went to like a restaurant at a golf course come wine estate. I was going to say wineyard.
Wineyard.
Not a word. Wine estate one night, didn't we? That was very high-end, accidentally high-end. But yeah, there's areas like Muizenberg, which is more sort of south of Cape Town, but still within the city area. That's really cool. There's like loads of surfers and beaches, and it's got that sort of laid-back beach vibe to it, but also slightly posh. And yeah, it's
very varied, isn't it? I think there's probably, there's bars and there's atmosphere and excitement, but there's also, if you want to go and have a fancy dinner with a tablecloth, that's there too.
The tablecloth.
And everything in between, it's very, I think cosmopolitan is the word, isn't it? It's very varied.
Yeah, and of course there's the wine country. So we had an amazing day, didn't we, where they picked us up so early in the morning. It was like 7 o'clock in the morning, maybe before. And you can go to Stellenbosch, which is a beautiful town just, I think, east of Cape Town, where there's loads of wine growing country. It's incredibly fertile. And they were telling us that the Dutch, when they first colonised the area, knew nothing of wine, didn't know really what they were doing, consulted the French. They set up some vineyards because they realised that it would be quite good soil for it, sent their first ever bottle to the French, and they were like, no, start again. And it takes so long to set up vineyards. I think from planting the first grapes to producing your first bottle of wine is between 10 and 15 years. That's how long it takes to get that going. And obviously now it's one of the premier wine producing countries in the world.
Yeah, and that guy had great facts.
He did.
So the wine industry was just a joke for years, but also the Dutch, because it was Dutch colonists originally, are really famous shipbuilders. And they wanted to build ships, but they planted oak trees, and the oak grew so fast because it was so warm that it ended up like a sponge, and you just couldn't use it to make ships. Or indeed wine barrels. So they have to import all their wine barrels.
And still to this day they have to import them.
You can't get timber, seemingly.
We ended up drinking loads of white wine at 9:45 in the morning,
we did,
which was an experience.
Sounds great.
And then we were on a bus. There were some other British people who were hilarious. They were from Warwickshire somewhere, weren't they?
Yes.
And they were like, we told them we were hiring a car to go around the rest of Cape Town, and it's like we said we were going to go outside with all of our valuables screaming, rob me, rob me. Their reaction was just hilarious.
They were horrified.
You're hiring a car?
The roads were fine. You have to kind of get into the habit of locking the door when you're driving along, because there is a risk that if you stop at lights, somebody will try and get in the car. But they drive on the left, which is what we're used to, and we didn't really have a problem with it, did we?
Yeah, the Warwickshire couple were quite intense.
They were terrified,
yeah. But so in the end, on this wine tour, we first glass of wine was about 9:45. Through the day, we went to, I think, 4 vineyards.
Have you had some wine now?
Yeah, no, I've been up for so long, my brain and my mouth don't want to work. We went to this cider place, we went to a brewery, and at the last vineyard, the people we were with they were just off their faces. I mean, everyone was slightly drunk, and we were on this bus, like everyone singing along at the top of their lungs, and everyone just bought wine at the last vineyard to chug away on the bus, and everyone was, I think the driver knew that was going on, and he's putting on the party tunes, and it was hilarious. There was this British boy who was the drunkest boy I've ever seen.
Oh yeah, he had a bit of a struggle, didn't he?
But that's what a wine tour should be, really, because we did one, you guys will hear about it in the next episode, in Argentina. It was rubbish. We only had like 1 glass of wine, didn't we?
It was bad.
That does sound disappointing.
It was crap. But just while we're on Cape Town, I think I've got this right, is Robben Island near Cape Town?
Yes.
So that's where Nelson Mandela was in prison for most of his sentence. Did you guys see Robben Island?
We looked into it, and it's quite a long boat trip. It's maybe a 6-hour...
No, it's not that far.
Boat trip.
It's shorter than that. The reason we didn't go, I think, is because I'd heard from our friends and from looking stuff up on the internet that you land on the island, you are taken around by a former prisoner who was a resident there, but you're whizzed round so quickly that there's no real opportunity to kind of get a feel of it or ask questions, and it just felt to me like for the expense it wouldn't necessarily be worth it when we knew we were going to do some other stuff around Mandela when we got to Johannesburg. But we know, it's a very popular thing to go on a trip to Robben Island, so I know a lot of people do that.
I like you, girl, in particular. You in particular. Say, I like your waist in particular. I like you, girl, in particular. Yeah, you in particular. Say, I like your waist in particular.
So we are going to be talking about your, you went on some sort of like game drive safari.
We did.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a minute. But Nick, you've been to South Africa. Do you want to explain where you went and what you did?
Yeah, so I'll be very brief. Like I said earlier, I was mainly based in PE, in Port Elizabeth. I actually can't remember much about it, I'll be honest. But like I said...
Because how long ago was this? Because it's been since we were together.
It was 7 or 8 years ago.
Because my memory of Nick going to South Africa, he went with his friend and we couldn't talk to each other apart from like 2 minutes a day because you bought one of those phone cards and it was like a 50 quid one and then it would run out in 2 minutes and I was like, hi, love you, bye.
And then there were certain times during the day where if it was like during the working day, like 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, the local phone lines, like the landlines, were jammed because all the local businesses are using them. Like, I didn't even know that was a thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, like this is, I guess, must have just only just been before like WhatsApp and Wi-Fi and all that sort of stuff where you can talk anywhere in the world for free now.
Maybe 8 years ago.
Yeah, so it was only just that stuff would have started to come in. But anyway, Port Elizabeth, we went to, like I said, Plettenberg Bay, which is a beautiful part of the country. And on the drive there is where the bungee is. And it's called, I'm going to try in a South African accent, Broekrans Bridge. That wasn't bad, actually, was it? Oh,
the bridge. Actually, while we're on accents, can you just say your sentence?
Yeah, we were taught a phrase by our friend Colleen, who says if you want to sound maximum Afrikaans, you have to say, I really like your iPhone.
Wow.
You can do it. You do it now. Here he goes.
I really like your iPhone.
Good. Amy?
I really like your iPhone.
That's not bad. I think iPhone needs work.
Yeah, iPhone needs work.
I can't roll my R's, so it's going to be tough. I really like your iPhone. Terrible.
Keep practicing. You get there.
But the bungee, I'm glad I did it, but like I said earlier, I hated it. I actually hated every single minute of it. The only part I enjoyed was once it was finished, and when you're back on solid ground, you feel like you're alive. Like, it's an amazing feeling, but it was terrifying. We'll put a link to our YouTube channel because actually we've got a video of a very young looking little skinny boy who was so terrified. I hated it, but I did it, and I'm glad I did it.
And what I like is because he was with his best friend and his best friend went first. So you had to do it. Once you'd done it, you had to do it.
Had to. Otherwise, I'd still hear about it today if I didn't. But that was an interesting experience. And then, like I said, went to Kruger National Park, which is a massive enclosed safari, I guess. You wouldn't know it's enclosed because it just looks like wilderness. I think it's, as big as some countries. And you just go in and you drive around and you can see all the big five, as I'd say, all the major animals that you want to see, elephants, lions and things like that. And we saw something very, very rare and very special. So we could see in the distance a load of cars were kind of congregated together, all parked together, and they're obviously looking at something. And they were all watching, and we got to see it, they were all watching a lion eat a zebra. So we missed the kill itself, but we saw the lions eating the zebra, and the male goes first, and all the females were just waiting their turn. And then when the male's done, then they can have what's left. And I think it's actually the females that do the hunting as well with lions. So they do all the work. And
yeah, that's true, actually. Yeah, I think they do.
But that was great, and that was my experience. But then, I never saw Johannesburg. My only experience in Cape Town, now this sounds more impressive than it really is, so I have actually spent the night in a prison in Cape Town, or like a jail, a police station, let's say.
That doesn't sound impressive. That sounds like you're in trouble.
But I wasn't in trouble. I had a connecting flight in Cape Town, and basically I arrived in the evening and my flight wasn't until very early the next day, so I thought I'm just going to hang around in the airport. And a policeman came up to me, he said, that's not very safe to just sleep in the airport. He said, you can come with me. And I slept in one of the rooms that they have for, like, victims of crime. So there's like a little bed set up, and he was like, yeah, you can spend the night here. Really nice of him. So, yeah, in Cape Town, I spent the night in a police station.
Wow. My husband, ladies and gentlemen.
Not a victim of crime.
No, and I wasn't a victim. I was just, it was great hospitality. So that was my South Africa experience. But I feel like I need to go back. I didn't do a lot of it. Like I said, I wasn't really a big traveller then. And plus, Amy, you haven't been. So I feel like we both need to go back.
Yeah, we'll definitely go. So tell us about your game reserve.
Well, we went to one that was nearer to Johannesburg. There was an original plan to go to the Kruger, wasn't there? But for various reasons, we couldn't do that. Plus, it's a really long way from Johannesburg. So I think if we do ever make it, we'll go somewhere slightly nearer as a base. But we went to one called Pilanesberg, which is very near to Sun City, which is kind of known in this country because it has a big like stadium where I know there were controversially bands used to play during apartheid. And that where they used to go was Sun City, but it's sort of more up towards Botswana, and it's much, much smaller than the Kruger. But we had an amazing time, didn't we? We just drove in Colleen's dad's car.
That kind of amazes me because it's like you can just go in your own car. There are cars that will drive you around, but going in your own car really surprised me because it's kind of like I grew up in the Midlands, so we used to go to the West Midlands Safari Park, which is where you drive your own car around and like monkeys pull your windscreen wipers off. But the fact that you can do that somewhere where there's lions is sort of amazing and a bit terrifying. And in fact, we had a small run-in with a herd of elephants.
Oh,
we
God.
didn't hit them,
we didn't hit them. They didn't hit us either. But we kind of rounded a bend, and suddenly there's an elephant in the road staring at you going, what are you doing on my road? And then it turns out there was a herd. I don't know how many were.
Probably
15?
like, yeah.
Wow, that many.
Crossing the road.
Wow.
And what you don't want to do, we learned, is get into a situation where there's elephants both in front of you and behind you. So there was a lot of kind of strategic reversing and going, oh, I'm terribly sorry, Mr. Elephant. But incredible to get that close to them.
But then that resulted in us going to a watering hole because round Pilanesberg there's loads of kind of hideaways and stuff that people can get into. And they're, like I don't know how I'd describe it.
Like a hide?
Yeah, a hideaway with a really kind of thin little viewing strip so the animals can't see you. And we ended up there and we saw this particular herd of elephants who we'd had a run-in with on the road. They all came to the watering hole and they all had a swim and bathed themselves. And then we were just about to leave and another herd came from the other side. And they were amazing because they were really close to us and they crossed the water. And just to be that close to creatures like elephants, there's something about elephants, I think, when you actually properly look at them and you're sort of this human hidden away and they can't see you. They are properly majestic creatures and they look like prehistoric almost, don't they? There's something completely wonderful about them. And this particular lot had like a little baby with them and that swam through the water in front of us and it was so small its little trunk was barely above the water and it was an incredible experience and you just felt really privileged. I know it's slightly cheesy to say, but you did properly feel privileged to witness that.
Yeah.
They are amazing animals. Now, a lot of people listening to this have probably travelled, because they'd be listening because they're travellers, but they would have done Southeast Asia and they would have seen elephants in Asia. Now, I don't think a lot of people realise this. Asian elephants are great and everything, but African elephants are massive.
They are.
African elephants are massive compared to Asian elephants.
They're quite different to
They are
Asian,
so
aren't
much
they?
bigger. But you guys have reminded me. I forgot the best bit of my trip. I've actually, I keep forgetting I did this.
I've just remembered this as well, yeah.
I went to an elephant sanctuary and fed like a baby elephant a bottle of milk. It was amazing.
Wow.
So we were up really close, touching them and everything, and it was such a cool experience. And you're right, I don't know what it is about elephants. They're just so they just seem so nice and gentle, and they're very emotionally intelligent, aren't they, as well? And I think them and us are one of the only animals or species or whatever in the world that actually mourn death and have funerals.
Yes.
Elephants actually do that, don't they?
And have sex for enjoyment, I believe, right?
I think that's pigs.
Getting that fact in there, Amy.
Well, there's definitely 4 types of animals that are like us and
Dolphins.
Dolphins as well, they're part of it. I thought seahorses as well, but there's some weird ones. But I thought elephants was one of them.
Elephants, it must be a lot of work, I would guess.
Well, yes.
You do it once and you think, never again.
And another elephant fact I heard the other day, and I'm not sure if this is true, so it might not be a fact. The elephants, when they look at us, they look at us as if we the way we look at puppies. So they think we're really cute.
That's so fun.
Wow.
And I really hope that's true.
I hope that's true.
That's
I find
nice,
it interesting.
isn't it?
They live in matriarchal societies, elephants. So it's entirely
right.
led by women.
Love it.
Women, I say, females, like generation after generation. And the males stay with them until they're in their sort of late teens, and then they go off into the wild, but the girls always stick together. And I really like that. Imagine being a boy raised entirely by all these strong women.
Oh, so out of the big 5, is elephants everybody's favourite?
I like a lion.
Yeah, the lions.
I was going to say lion's my top one, I think.
Yeah, they're probably more. I don't know what it is. Oh, I'm going to go elephant mime just because they're massive, the biggest animal on the planet apart from a whale. Is that right? Biggest land mammal.
Sounds right.
And you had your experience with feeding the baby one, so you owe it to
Amazing
the
experience.
elephants.
Yeah.
Yeah, we only saw lions quite far away, and they were just lying down. So, in terms of entertainment value, I think elephants would have to win.
Yeah.
We didn't get the full big 5, I have to
We
say.
did not get
we
the full big
did.
5, no.
Let's try and remember now what the big 5 are. We did elephants, rhinos.
Rhinos, yeah, saw a lot of those.
Yeah, that was very good.
Hippos.
Is
Are they
that?
in the
I
big
don't
5?
think that's.
I don't
in
know.
the
We
big
saw a lot of
5.
hippos anyway.
Giraffes.
Giraffe, yeah.
Giraffes.
We did see
Love a
giraffes.
giraffe.
I heard of giraffe. Much paler in real life than I thought that in the wild than the ones they've got at Colchester Zoo, for example, where that I've seen in this country. I think jaguar. It's a bit niche,
cheetah
isn't it?
and buffalo.
Is it? Okay, well, we didn't see those.
We didn't see a cheetah. Did we see buffalo?
No.
No, we didn't see any buffalo. But we saw a lot of other things. You know, those are the top 5. But we saw
Impalas.
hippos, as I said, loads of impalas. Impalas were old news by the end of the day.
We had songs that we sang when we
Yes.
saw certain creatures. For example, when we saw elephants, we said elephants, elephants, like that. And then this is a song that I didn't know, but Jez and Colleen were big fans of the Impala song.
There's a song by Snow, I think, called Informer.
Okay.
From several years ago, and the chorus goes Informer, and then there's a very complicated rap that I couldn't do but Colleen could. But if you replace Informer with Impala, you can have yourself a great time.
This happened a lot. But we were there from 5 a.m. and by about midday we were all sort of falling asleep, weren't we, a little bit?
Because the animals don't really do anything in the middle of the day, so you have to go very early. So we got up at about 2, I think, to drive there, and got there just as it was opening, which was really good. But yeah, fairly exhausting. Very expensive ice creams as well.
Oh yeah,
Very
spent all our
expensive
money
ice
on an
creams.
ice cream.
Yeah.
It was a Magnum.
Oh, okay. I was going to ask, is it expensive to get in?
It wasn't too bad. I don't remember specifically how much because Colleen got us in, and because she's South African, you get a discount if you're South African. They charge tourists more.
Yeah.
So with our British accents, she just said, "Oh yeah, me and my friends are here." I'm not going to try and do it.
Good tip.
I'd really like
Just
it off
hustled
it.
us in.
That we were prepared to say that, weren't we?
We
If
were,
it got us in for a bit cheaper, but I don't remember exactly how much it was. But I have to say, generally, the cost of living and the cost of accommodation in South Africa is very cheap compared to most other places we've ever been. Like really fancy hotels are maybe 60 quid a night, 70 quid a night, which compared to here where you're going to pay 200, 250 pounds for a high-end hotel like that, it's obviously really great. And then meals were really cheap, weren't they? So actually in terms of spending money, we did not spend a lot while we were there, which was very good.
Okay, and just as we wrap up, can you just briefly explain to me what's South African food like?
Well, the traditional food is they really love a barbecue. South Africans, much like a braai, exactly,
Yes, that's the thing.
like their Southern Hemisphere brethren, the Australians. Everyone's a big fan of a braai, and they have a kind of sausage called boerewors, which means like farmer's sausage, which is kind of really properly meaty, little bit spiced.
Is it beef?
It
I think there's all kinds of varieties, aren't there?
Yes.
But we were staying with Gavin and Colleen, who are vegan, so we had probably a slightly skewed experience of it.
And if anyone that's listening is a vegan, is it relatively easy to travel around and eat as a vegan?
I think it's probably pretty tough, to be honest.
Yes, so I think it is possible, but obviously it is a country that is really skewed towards meat. Big meat-eating place. For example, on the day we went on the wine tour, we went to this cider place and they served up some boerewors, didn't they, along with the cider and that kind of thing. And obviously biltong is big,
Yeah.
which I always
That's
thought would
what I
just
was
be a
trying to think
cliche. I'm trying to think like snails in France, like nobody really eats them, but biltong is popular.
So that's like beef jerky, isn't it? Like
It
dried
is.
meat.
Yes.
It is.
Very nice. Nick, I've just remembered you have a South African tattoo on your arm.
Let's see if they can guess what animal it is. It's not one of the big 5. It's a clue.
Get your T-shirt off.
Oh.
Is it... it's a springbok.
Looks like a springbok.
There you go.
He's got it.
The national animal.
Yes, we saw a lot of springboks.
So, what would you give South Africa out of 10 in terms of being a tourist?
Ooh.
10 being the
Well, it's
best.
very hard to summarise an entire nation in a score from 1 to 10.
This is based on, out of every trip that you've done, obviously we haven't got time to go into that, but what would you give it out of all of your trips?
Do we have to do a joint score or a separate score?
No, you can give a separate score.
Well, I'm going to go 8 out of 10 as an experience and a
Okay.
destination, but with the proviso that I think it's important if you go that you try to experience real life rather than just an enclosed one-dimensional view of it as a country, because there is so much more to it than what most tourists see.
yeah.
I'm going to go with 7, but that's mostly because I had a small bout of food poisoning while I was there.
Ah, that always brings a trip down, that.
Yeah, it does stick in the memory a little bit. But I should say that wasn't. That was due to home cooking.
So it's
provided
Gavin's
by
fault.
someone who I was going to say provided by someone who shall remain nameless, but well, we think it was anyway. So it wasn't. It's not like it's a risk with South Africa. Like I think generally the food is fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, that happened. So 7.
Okay, and Nick, on your mini trip over there.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. It is a spectacular place to go. I remember the drive to Kruger, driving past some amazing scenery. Yeah, I didn't really go to the major tourist places, like I said, Cape Town, Johannesburg. I feel like I can't really judge it. But yeah, as a travel destination, it's a fascinating place to go. So I'm going to give it 8 out of 10.
Very nice. You've all made me really excited to go. And I've always wanted to go before anyway. Just other plans have kind of got in the way. But yeah, we'll definitely make sure we get our way to South Africa. Okay, so thanks very much for listening, and thanks guys for coming in and
Thank
telling
you.
us everything. You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter on What the Pho Travel Podcast.
Our next episode coming up will be all about Argentina. We'll be going back to our Latin America trip, and good way to support the show if you guys want to do that, apart from listening, of course. We do have T-shirts up for sale on our shop on our website. Please feel free to get in touch with the show. You can do that by checking out our website, www.whatthephotravelpodcast.com. From that, you can find all of our social media channels. We're on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook. Our email address is whatthephopodcast@gmail.com.